I got shredded natural, and to be honest, it sucked. And in this video, I'm going to show you what getting shredded as a natural truly does to your blood work.
What's up guys, Derek, moreplates.com. Today we're going to be reacting to a natural bodybuilder's blood test results. He is an individual who not only got peeled out of his fucking tree, he is a guy who got follow-up blood work to assess what kind of impact it had on his hormone profile, and subsequent to that, trying to recover his hormone profile. So a lot of people, you'll do a hardcore diet as a natural, get your blood drawn and find that your testosterone's in the fucking gutter because your body's essentially in preservation starvation mode and down regulates any kind of processes that could, expend unnecessary calories or is using up energy and is energy intensive. It's trying to literally prevent you from fucking dying. So expectedly, a lot of things down regulate, including your HPTA, gonadotropin production, thyroid hormone production, etc. So for this guy, one of the things we're going to be talking about is what happened to his blood work, not only after the diet as a natural, is it even healthy to be shredded whatsoever, but when he tried to recover, did he indeed recover? If so, how long did it take? And in addition to that, we're going to sort of be touching on, is there a debate to be made on guys in the fitness industry who are trying to stay like single digit body fat percentage, and what's actually healthier? Is it healthier to be a natural and being perpetually shredded year round? Like you remember Marine, who's, to be honest, I think he just wanted to be saucy, but at the end of the day, he mentioned how he, was trying to be shredded year round, and it kind of led him to having a lower quality of life, which, in turn, obviously a logical conclusion would be, I don't want to feel like shit, but I do want to maintain a lean body composition long term. And the only way I can be both lean and have my dick work properly is, I shredded, obviously, rather than just like lean, is essentially, not everyone has to do this, by the way. Just in his situation, HRT was necessary for him to have an intersection of a high quality of life while simultaneously being shredded, because otherwise he would have been essentially functioning, borderline hypogonadism, like around the clock, which, what's more unhealthy at the end of the day, being on a therapeutic replacement amount of TRT or having your body fucking starving of hormones constantly and having neuro and cardiotoxicity from lack of testosterone and estrogen, as well as, other satellite interactions. Like what is better? You know what I mean? So that's sort of what we're going to be getting into, as well as relating it to some of the clinical literature on natural bodybuilders, how long it took them to recover, how it relates to this guy. Did he do anything, different, wrong, correct, whatever? We're going to be getting into it. We're going to be starting off with the video is by Wolfing Physique, by the way. Drop a like if you enjoy his stuff. He gives me a shout out in the video. I've only watched a couple minutes of it, but seems like he has a lot of overlap with some of the shit that we talk about. So might be worth giving a visit and a sub. The video is called My Bloodwork / Testosterone as a Natural Athlete, the Ugly Truth of Being Extremely Lean as a Natty. So here he gives an introduction. He shows how shredded he was. I'm just going to show you here. As you can see, Christmas tree dialed in. The guy's fucking diced. And he kind of gives an introduction in the video about, he wants a bit more gas on his channel. He mentions how he feels like a car who's like sputtering and shit, and he needs a bit of gas. So obviously go gas up his video if you appreciate the content and the insight into his health status here. He basically lays out a 20-minute deep dive into all of his biomarkers, and he actually explains them himself instead of, my interpretation typically from A to Z. He kind of goes through it, and I'm just going to be sitting along for the ride. I haven't actually watched the video and giving my feedback as we go. If he has, persistent issues, what I see as a red flag, as well as the shit I mentioned earlier, relating it back to other guys and what you can expect for yourself, and what we see traditionally or historically, anecdotally and whatnot. So anyways, I will jump over certain parts if they're kind of irrelevant, because this video is going to be fucking long, or if they're redundant, or if it's something I'm going to mention, then he's going to say the same thing after, because we have similar stances on the biomarker interpretation. But anyways, let's get fucking into it.
To all you guys. And yeah, I don't know why, but yeah. I mean, like, if you're here right now, and I documented it, as most of you knew, I was dieting for a really long time. I documented it on my YouTube channel. I did a photo shoot where I got like really shredded, and it sucked, and I felt horrible. So yeah, let's get into the blood work.
He's on 1.25 times speed, by the way, if you're wondering why he's talking kind of fast.
I did a standard like panel. I also measured my total testosterone. I do not have like all the measurements to have a really good clear picture, but I have enough to explain what it means and yeah, what it did to me, you know? So let's get into it. And I do not really have like a good clear picture of it, but you can go to this timestamp to check out what my blood work is, so you can see it yourself if you want. You can check it right now, but right now I'm just going to explain what it all means, and yeah, you can see it at this timestamp. So if you really want to see it, you can just listen to me and I'll explain it for you. And if More Plates, More Dates can see this video and maybe review it, hey, that's awesome. I like you, More Plates, More Dates. You have a good ass channel. And yeah, subscribe to the guy. The guy is amazing.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the shout out and the support. Let's hopefully this video gets some traction. So let's get into it.
Hemoglobin is in a low range. Hemoglobin is low. Hemoglobin is the protein molecule in red blood cells that carries oxygen from the lungs to certain tissues of the body and returns carbon dioxide from the tissues back to the lungs. If you have like a low hemoglobin level, it's called like anemia, or simply put, a low red blood cell count. So yeah, you have a lower red blood cell count. So yeah, it doesn't sound very good if that's low. But that's all I want you to know for now. All right, I'm going to butcher this.
Okay, so, you know, in terms of hematology, presumably he's low androgen status because of the diet. So, you know, androgenic signaling resulting in erythropoiesis, resulting in a adequate production of red blood cell count. You know, obviously for him, being deficient presumably is the reason his hematology, I assume, is deficient. We will find out once we see the actual blood work, but we shall continue.
Butcher this one. Hematocrit in English, hematocrit, and erythrocytes. They're low. So a decreased hematocrit indicates anemia. Again, for example, this can be due to iron deficiency. If that's the case, I do not know. Can be, but it can also be a vitamin deficiency. So other causes of a decreased hematocrit can be that you're just vitamin deficient, bleeding, liver disease or cancer, which is not the case, I hope. But these are just things that can indicate that. The reason hematocrit and erythrocytes can be low can be that your body makes too little red blood cells or breaks them down too quickly. And there is then a deficit of red blood cells. In most cases, the body does not get enough nutrients that are needed to make red blood cells. In this case, it could be iron, folic acid, or vitamin B12.
Yeah, so your diet model too, being deficient in macro and micronutrients, obviously is going to contribute to that, but in addition, downstream, the actual androgenic signaling inherently from your endogenous production is going to play a big role on how synonymously good or low, or wherever your hematology profile happens to be. It's not a coincidence that guys who use anabolic steroids end up with viscous blood and have to, actually therapeutically phlebotomize themselves sometimes. They end up with red blood cell counts, hematocrit, hemoglobin levels way out of fucking line, way above the reference range in some cases, and can be problematic. So obviously the opposite side of the spectrum, if you have a guy at super physiologic androgen levels and he is, above the reference range, it's not uncommon to think, oh, a guy who's deficient in androgens, well, the opposite probably happens, and you would be correct to assume that conclusion.
But vitamin B12, it's definitely not it. I'm not deficient in vitamin B12. It's even above the reference range, like very high. And honestly, I do not really know why, but maybe I have to research it a little bit more thoroughly. But vitamin B12 levels too high, yeah, I don't know how, but and why. If someone knows, let me know, but I'm not a doctor. So
what? You have high B12? That's what I'm interpreting. He said something I see common is guys not realizing their supplements have a fuck ton of B12 in them. Guys are taking their pre-workout. They don't realize that it's 21,000% the daily value of B12 in it, or they're drinking like Monster energy drinks or something that's, loaded with B12 for, like energy enhancement. That kind of thing can significantly elevate your B12 levels and give you a false, high reading essentially. And it might be outside the scope of your traditional diet, so you're not really considering it because you're thinking of the foods you're eating. You're not thinking of that random drink you have or that random pre-workout or whatever. Because, typically you wouldn't even think of pre-workout as calories. You're just thinking, oh, it's like citrulline and caffeine and blah, blah, blah. But in some, pre-workouts, you will often find like B complexes and especially just mega doses of fucking B12, for energy and whatnot. And it can definitely lead to something like this.
I think that the reason hematocrit and erythrocytes are low is because of maybe iron deficiency, low folic acid levels. So we have to pay more attention to that.
I can almost promise you if you're that energy deprived to be shredded and then you think that you add in like a folic acid supplement, it's gonna fix it. Like it's going to be the androgen deficiency more often than not, in my opinion. Obviously it's contributing factors of lack of micros, but I mean, yeah, like at the end of the day, if you're depriving yourself of enough food to actually satisfy physiologic functions, your body's starving, it's clamoring for fucking energy, and your low, HPTA function, like expecting high levels of erythropoiesis is like, it's not gonna happen.
But let's be honest, if you eat well below your calorie requirement, you will be short of certain nutrients, especially if you do not supplement, which I did not do, all right? Next up, being shredded sucks for your liver. I have like high ALT levels, like high. They are at 201, which is a lot, and it's like a lot. So ALT refers to alanine aminotransferase, and ALT is simply a test that checks for like liver damage. So your doctor can use this test to find out if a disease, drug, or injury has damaged your liver or diet, low calories, starving. And don't make no mistake, your liver does a lot of important things for your body. It makes a fluid called bile that helps your body digest food. It removes like waste products and other toxins from your blood. It produces protein and cholesterol, so important. And yeah, this enzyme can be found mainly in your liver, and smaller amounts of ALT are in your kidneys and other organs. And your body uses ALT to break down food into energy. Normally, ALT levels in the blood are low. If your liver is damaged, it will release more ALT into your blood and levels will rise. So that's in my case, so my liver is a little bit damaged. So the process of getting very lean simply damaged my liver.
Well, in addition to that though, you're damaging muscle in the gym. Like if you just did a heavy ass lift and then you go get your blood work, are you going to have an artificial elevation of liver enzymes? Are you going to have a significantly altered kidney parameters? Like there's a lot of shit that's gonna look off if you do a heavy lift in a calorie deprived state before you go get blood work. Well, even not a calorie deprived state just in general, but obviously being severely deprived for weeks and weeks on end does not help your the actual integrity of your blood work. Like it's not like it's representative of your actual health status necessarily. It's reflective of your severely starved self whilst also exerting ridiculous amounts of weight training upon yourself, damaging muscle tissue, and then having that all reflected simultaneously in your biomarkers. So I don't know if he's considering the kind of time between his lift relative to when he got his blood test or not, because that could make a night and day difference.
But I did find out that consuming more folate-rich foods and adding a folic acid supplement maybe into my diet, it could help lower ALT levels. So I think I have a big shortage of ALT levels because of my low folic acid consumption maybe.
Just a general rule of thumb, I would advise not lifting for at least a few days before your blood test if you're going to get like a comprehensive panel to assess your like health in general. I would not be doing any sort of heavy shit, for a couple days prior, because you could have like a artificially inflated liver enzymes, for example. You could have your EGFR look, sporadically like lower. You could have things that look way more problematic than they actually are because of, your lifestyle choice that you've induced upon yourself that has a significant aberration on some, fill in the blank biomarker that you're not considering. Then you think you're having like fucking kidney failure, you think you're in liver failure, you think something, when in reality, it might be totally not problematic whatsoever. It's just, what you did the day before that is fucking you over. Like some people literally lift and then go get the blood work. It's like, that's the worst fucking thing you could do.
Yeah, which can be a big reason for also my low hematocrit and erythrocytes. So yeah.
Even shit as basic as like what time you get the blood drawn can be like a massive difference on your testosterone level. You know, if you go in the late afternoon versus in the morning when everything's peaked, you know, you could have what appears to be like borderline or like pretty low T relative to normally you being like closer to high normal. Like that's the kind of difference even hours can make, let alone what you actually did earlier, you know, prior to the blood test in terms of lifting and shit. Literally just like a few hours of waiting can start to have a significant impact on what hormone levels are reflected in the serum.
Maybe it's the folate. I don't know. For people who do not know what folate is, it is a naturally occurring B9 vitamin found in certain foods. Folic acid is a synthetic form of B9 used in supplements and added to some processed foods. And your body processes them in different ways also. So while they aren't quite identical, both folate and folic acid have benefit when it comes to liver health and lowering ALT levels in the blood, as far as I understood. So,
by the way, I would not recommend supplementing with folic acid. I would be looking at methylfolate personally. I would, like especially for the prevalence of MTHFR polymorphisms in the population nowadays, I would not be adding folic acid into any supplement, to be honest. I would be replacing that with methylfolate for sure. And I don't know, even like folic acid enriched stuff I might be weary of if I was like for me, for example, that's what I am, you know, homozygous C677T MTHFR. I can never fucking say that for some reason. But for me, for example, I have significant inhibition in methylation demand. So for me, you know, having something like folic acid enriched in, you know, a multivitamin or some shit, it could be like problematic for me. It might be counterproductive even. There's even evidence showing, suggesting, I should say, that folic acid was linked to higher risk of miscarriages among women with MTHFR polymorphisms. Now again, some of that evidence has since been refuted and it's not, you know, 100% clear, but either way, personally, I'm very weary of it as somebody who has methylation issues.
So next up, cholesterol. You have like two kinds of cholesterol. You have LDL and HDL. LDL cholesterol is often called the bad cholesterol because it collects in the walls of your blood vessel and raising your chances of heart problems like a heart attack or stroke. But cholesterol isn't all dangerous, guys. Your body needs it to protect its nerves and make healthy cells and hormones. So it's also very important. You cannot live without cholesterol, otherwise we would not be here. But most of the cholesterol in your body is LDL. The rest is high density lipoprotein, also called HDL, or the good cholesterol. And HDL takes LDL to your liver where it's flushed out of your body. And high HDL levels might protect against heart attacks and strokes. So HDL is good stuff. It's good stuff. So in my case, from my blood work, the bad cholesterol is in the good range. And the good cholesterol in the upper range. So that's good news, right? And that's the nice thing about being very shredded. I think the cholesterol will get better. That's most often when people also lose a lot of fat, most of their blood work will also improve if you are still at a healthy body fat, all right? If you're getting healthier, losing fat when you're obese, for example, your cholesterol will get better, all right? You will get better, even if you eat shit. Next up, I have high ferritin levels.
I don't know why you said even if you eat shit at the end.
Getting healthier, losing fat when you're obese, for example, your cholesterol will get better, all right? You will get better, even if you eat shit. Next up.
Like everything he said was like sounding pretty decent until he said that. It's like not, you're not going to improve your lipid parameters if you throw, like if you're a hyper responder to dietary cholesterol, even if you're in a deficit, if you throw in fucking 8 eggs into your diet, you think that it's suddenly going to improve your lipid parameters because you are in a 500 calorie deficit instead of, you know, at maintenance without the eggs in there. Like obviously the dietary choices can play a significant role on what's going to show up in your blood. As even seen during my vertical diet log, you saw how much of an impact just a few eggs had on my cholesterol and LDL, literally fucking doubled it. You know, all the people who say, oh, you know, dietary cholesterol has no impact, fucking idiots, dude. Like they have not actually looked at enough blood work to see proof of it. They just go off of the one study that says, oh, it makes no difference, blah, 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 blah. It makes a fucking huge difference for some people. Like I'm literally looking at adding ezetimibe into my protocol simply so I can handle eating an amount of eggs that I feel is a nutritious supplement to my diet. So It's definitely not correct, in my opinion, to say, like, obviously he's not suggesting you eat shit. I'm just saying that dietary choices will make an impact on your lipid parameters to a significant degree in certain individuals. Now, for some individuals, it's not going to make that much of a difference between if you add in, a little bit of fucking egg here and there. But for some individuals like me, it makes a fucking massive difference.
I have high ferritin levels. Ferritin is a blood protein that contains iron. And a ferritin test helps doctors understand how much iron your body stores. If a ferritin test reveals that your blood ferritin level is lower than normal, it indicates your body's iron stores are low. And you could also have an iron deficiency. In my case, they are at the higher end of the reference range in the Netherlands. But I do not see that as a problem because it's still considered to be in the normal range from my own research. So I don't think it's a big problem. And like I said before, I have very high vitamin B12 levels, which I am very confused about. The normal range for vitamin B12 can vary slightly depending on which lab you tested, but a normal level of vitamin B12 in your bloodstream is generally between 190 and 950 picograms per milliliter from my research, and mine is at 1130.
Yeah, so I've had a 1000 plus B12 before too, and from what I deduced, it ended up being energy drink consumption. I've had subsequent blood tests where my B12 was totally fine on the exact same diet model without that shit in there. So I would definitely be looking at what are you supplementing? Is there a giant mega dose of a B complex somewhere in there that you're not accounting for? What are you eating? What's it enriched with? What is going on that you're not factoring in? And now obviously after that, if you can't think of literally anything, then get the next steps checked, because high B12 could be indicative of something a bit more serious.
My TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, is very high, pretty high, higher than. It's above the reference range. TSH can diagnose thyroid disorders such as hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism. And hypothyroidism is where your thyroid gland does not produce enough hormones. And common signs of an underactive thyroid are being tired all the time, gaining weight, and feeling pretty depressed. And you also have hyperthyroidism, which is an overactive thyroid, and that occurs when your thyroid gland produces too much of the hormone thyroxine. And hyperthyroidism can accelerate your body's metabolism, causing you unintentionally to lose weight. And it can also cause a rapid or irregular heartbeat. And the thyroid is a butterfly-shaped gland in the throat. It produces hormones that help regulate many bodily functions such as metabolism, heart rate. 3 months later, after getting sugar, I was cold all the freaking time. And I even was after this test, 3 months later, after getting shredded. And why that is, I'll explain in just a moment. But I know for a fact that I had hypothyroidism, and even 3 months later after my shoot. All right, because
so when you're that lean, calorie deprived, your body is trying to be in preservation mode. Like I said, it's starving. It is trying to down-regulate hormone production. It is not functioning at a high level because it simply does not have the support, for basic physiologic functions, and everything kind of down-regulates, including thyroid hormone production. And subsequently, you can see a massive amount of stress occurring where your TSH goes through the roof, trying to essentially get adequate levels, presumably. If you are severely calorie deprived and you are not getting enough T4, not enough T3, what is your body going to do? It might freak out and spike your TSH in order to try and stimulate the production of adequate hormones. And if it's unable to do that, then you can imagine having a perpetually elevated TSH, again, sort of ties back into the conversation, is being shredded as a natural year-round, assuming that you're one of the individuals who ends up in a position like this, because there are some guys who are, single digits or striking distance single digits who are natural, who maintain decent looking biomarker profiles. But for individuals like Wolfing Physique, for example, if to be shredded, you need to have a fucking hypothyroid TSH level, and your thyroid is getting fucking bombarded, And like it could maybe even lead to a higher chance of thyroid cancer. Like there's certain shit that might go totally overlooked by somebody thinking, oh, it's, you know, healthier to be natural. Maybe in some situations, yeah, maybe in some situations not. You know, if this is something you're going to be literally doing as a lifestyle, like it's not a lifestyle you can live as a natural, in my opinion, being like single digits year round whilst maintaining optimal biomarkers in all aspects, especially in endocrine context. It's gonna be fucking tough. And I'm not suggesting that you use TRT to stay shredded. Like you should just be a healthy body weight year round, that you're cosmetically appealing but not fucking shredded. That would be the ideal. And that's something you can maintain good health markers as a natural. If you want to stay natural, that's fucking fine. But for individuals who are going to be subjecting themselves to this severely deprived perpetual diet model, at that point, you got to kind of ask yourself, like, it's going to be unhealthy regardless, probably, but it's like if you're depriving the fuck out of yourself all the time, you're, you know, your leptin and ghrelin's constantly dysregulated, everything's kind of all over the map, you're constantly fatigued, are you going to be better off doing it naturally, or are you going to be better off at least replacing some of the hormones that are otherwise tanked in the gutter, and you're not even fucking producing properly anyways, you know? That is a reasonable question, in my opinion.
I had those symptoms. I was like very cold. And I was cold all the time, all right? Like, and that sucks. And it also has to do with maybe having less fat on your body, you're less insulated, but also you just have a slow thyroid, all right? And of course, I did not get the T3 and T4 tested, which are important. But let's just say I am certain I had like hypothyroidism because
Hey, you should be getting your T3 and T4, obviously. But for him, like, I think it's probably safe to assume, based on these symptoms, based on the TSH level, like, if he presented with all of that, you shouldn't even need necessarily confirmation with blood work. It would be like if a guy showed up with hypogonadal as fuck, and his dick literally wasn't working. He was, you know, fatigued constantly, had horrible sleep, mood swings, basically all the red flags in the book of low T, and then a doctor, you know, like brushed you off because you did not have a, you know, 200 nanogram per deciliter total and instead had a 300, even if your gonadotropins are like fucking all like suboptimal as hell, and you get turned away simply because your total isn't where it should be on paper, you know, that could easily be this situation, you know, in a thyroid context. Because if you show up with a TSH through the fucking roof, your body's freaking out trying to make enough hormones, it's inadequate, it doesn't have the ability to, and you have all of these symptoms, you know, it's not hard to put two and two together if you're hypothyroid. You shouldn't need to see a T3 sub of the reference range to confirm that there's something going on here that is not ideal. You know, I'm not saying you should medicate necessarily, because obviously his well, I don't have baseline blood work to say for certain, but I mean, it sounds like it's diet induced, and I don't necessarily think you need confirmation testing to confirm that, you know, you're cold all the time, you're fucking, you know, your hair's falling out or whatever. You have like every symptom in the book. Like you shouldn't, that's what all I'm trying to say is you shouldn't need to have a confirmation of, oh, you're like one little micro point, 1 decimal point away from being under the reference range, therefore you're fine. Like if you have all the symptoms in the book, you need to dig harder if you are trying to get a proper medical diagnosis.
I just had all the issues. And you know, if you're natural, it sucks, all right? Most people just supplement with T3 or T4 or whatever, thyroid hormones, or all the things that get like lower, they can supplement with it, you know? Fake natties, etc., you know? Use this like a fat burner. Yeah, just things like that. I mean, if you're truly natural, it sucks, bro. It truly sucks to be shredded as a natural, all right? Next up, for the last thing that you all have been waiting for, is my testosterone levels. My total testosterone levels. I got only my total testosterone levels tested. Before I tell you what it is, I'm going to be very honest with you. When you get shredded once, and like you walk around in like Dubai and all the veins are like popping, you know, you have striations, you have shredded glutes, you look sick. You look like sick, you're so lean, you see all the muscle fibers, etc. Shredded legs, veins in your legs. It's awesome. It feels good to be shredded, to be honest. And it can be very addicting to stay shredded. And I know better. I know my body, I just can't, I didn't feel good. I didn't feel good being shredded, all right? And to be honest, I have like a very, very hard time to like accept that I have to look a little bit worse to be healthier, all right? to have optimal hormones, testosterone levels, energy, etc. So I thought by myself, all right, I have like low testosterone levels. I just felt that. My lipid was tanked, low energy. I couldn't even grind anymore behind the laptop, work-wise. And I didn't really want to talk to people. It was all just, it was not good. Just low testosterone levels. I felt it. Trust me, I know how it feels.
When you get that lean, like you literally don't give a fuck about anything. You're just perpetually hungry. You stop caring about sex even. You're barely squeaking along.
3 months later, I thought to myself like, all right, I'm going to try to maintain this low key. I thought maybe I can improve my testosterone levels naturally. I can stay this lean and have like optimal testosterone levels. So I focused on my zinc intake. I focused on sleeping enough. I did my weight training. I was eating at maintenance. I was like, I was really trying to get it up. 3 months later, no. 11.2. The reference range in...
Okay, so the thing that I find notable is how he said he's eating at maintenance for 3 months, unless I misunderstood.
Focused on sleeping enough. I want to talk to people. Trust me. I myself like, all right, I'm going to try to maintain this low key. I thought maybe I can improve my testosterone levels naturally. I can stay this lean and have like optimal testosterone levels.
So presumably he does not think that he's going to increase his calories to maintenance, as in like when people say that, obviously your maintenance is whatever you grinded your calories down to and now you're at right now to sustain your current body fat. So I'm assuming he's not referring to what most people say is maintenance is like, 3,000 calories or, obviously it's going to be lower or higher for some people, but like when people say maintenance, they typically are referring to their homeostatic kind of baseline before they ever started their cut, rather than what their new baseline is at the peak of their deficit. You know what I mean? So I'm not really sure what he means here.
So I focused on my zinc intake. I focused on sleeping enough. I did my weight training. I was eating at maintenance.
So I don't know, like presumably maybe he's using it out of context in terms of what most people would say. Again, if let's just say I finished a cut after 16 weeks and I'm fucking peeled out of my mind and I'm at 2,200 calories with cardio, 7 days a week. If I say I'm going to jump up to maintenance, like most people would interpret that as like jumping my calories up to 3,000, like whatever the baseline was, that was my maintenance before I grinded my deficit down all the way to 2,100, where then now my like maintenance is 2,100, but you know what I mean. My fucking baseline maintenance is what most people think he would be referring to here. So maybe he's referring to his maintenance being like what it is now in terms of like the severely, not down regulated, I'm trying to find the better word, but newly adapted baseline kind of thing based on his energy expenditure, etc. I don't know, like I can't imagine he would think he's not going to gain weight jumping his calories up like I'm assuming at least he's probably in 1,000 calorie deficit, if not maybe, I don't know, ballpark, something around, 700, 800 to 1,000 calorie deficit to get as lean as he did. Could be wrong on that, but like no one would think I'm going to jump my calories up, stay the same leanness, and increase my testosterone, concurrently.
I was really trying to get it up. 3 months later, no. 11.2. The reference range in the Netherlands is 9 to 37.3. And mine was 11.2. And you know what the doctor said to me? Testosterone is good. Literally, like this. And he only says that because it's in the reference range, but it is in the low range. If you recalculate to nanograms per deciliter, it's 322, which is very low. It's like in the low range. Even after 3 months of trying to get my testosterone up, just everything I need to do nutrition-wise, omega-3, fatty acids, everything. I just tried everything, all right?
Now, the interesting thing about that is the reference range he mentioned. If you actually convert it to nanograms per deciliter, you get a reference range, if I'm ballparking correctly, in the low 200s with the high end over 1,000. So I'm just surprised that this country would have a reference range that goes over 1,000. Typically, like in Canada, they think everyone's like a low T beta male as fuck. Like soy boy, essentially. The top of the reference range goes up to like 900 if you're lucky. It's fucking ridiculous. So it's kind of interesting how here, where he lives, in an area I would, assume to be fairly strict and not progressive on TRT and whatnot, that they have a reference range going over 1,000. So I don't know. Anyways, not that the reference range is indicative necessarily if they're going to be lenient on TRT or not. It's just interesting to see the disparity between different countries in terms of what they consider to be normal. So anyways, his being in the 300s, obviously not ideal, whatsoever. For me, I'm thinking calories have not been brought back up to where they should be for a long enough duration of time. But again, it remains quite unclear. Did he just try and optimize his diet based on micronutrient intake as well as sleep hygiene practices, or did he actually walk his calories back up to what it was his baseline before cutting and still wasn't able to recover? Because the context could be it's kind of convoluted here if we don't actually know what he means by maintenance.
I just can't do it. Low T levels, it sucked. So yeah, it's a hard thing to, if you're natural, bro, it sucks, all right? You're not gonna have like high testosterone levels if you do not have the genetics for it, and being shredded at the same time, it just sucks, all right? So like I said in the beginning of the video, here it is. These are my levels, the levels that are like in a low or too high range, and they are marked in red. And yeah, as you can see, my testosterone is not marked in red, but...
Right, okay, so we already kind of went over this in the breakdown. So the hematology profile, all concurrently low, indicating a simultaneous reflection of lack of erythropoiesis from a lack of androgenic signaling, as well as general lack of substrate to begin with, raised ALT quite significantly actually. High HDL. Surprised he doesn't have his gonadotropins in here. So he has TSH, which is high. We already kind of went over that. Testosterone at 11.2 from 9 to 37.3. So like ideally to see kind of where the bottleneck is and what the issue is exactly, I would also want to see a luteinizing hormone as well as a follicle stimulating hormone. A lot of people might say, like, when it comes to TSH, if you're symptomatic and you see a TSH through the fucking roof, like, it's pretty easy to deduce like what your body is trying to accomplish and what is happening under the hood, essentially. With testosterone though, with the 11.2, I wouldn't want to see how hard his body is trying to produce tests, like how down-regulated is the HPTA, like how is his pituitary output, essentially. Like it's one thing to see the downstream reflection of Leydig cell stimulation with your testosterone level here, but like upstream, I'd want to see like where the bottleneck is that's causing this low T level. And in general, like to me, it seems less of a matter of lack of micros, lack of sleep hygiene issues. It's more of just lack of general energy I said in general like fucking 7 times. It's a lack of energy, like the guy, presumably, he mentioned, like when he said maintenance, the only reason it was sort of unclear, again, is because he said it in the context of maintaining his current body fat, which is the shredded, peak conditioned body fat. So like when he says maintenance, I'm assuming he must actually not mean what most people would consider homeostatic maintenance pre-cutting. Rather, he's referring to what his current calorie amount is to maintain the weight, being, 2,100 calories or something like that. And maintaining at that, it's going to be pretty fucking hard to just assume. Like you're not going to recover your test levels by keeping your micros at the top end, getting your RDAs in and whatnot through a multivitamin and shit, if you're still depriving your body of just actual energy to actually perform physiologic function. So, I'm not surprised that maintaining that, maintenance, which is really just like a severe deficit, presumably, is, at least relative to baseline starting metrics, is resulting in a sustained low T level. Like this is exactly how the body responds in a, act of preservation / avoiding starvation. It's going to freak out and downregulate things. So like my concern would be if he bumped his calories back up to like pre-cutting levels, you would probably gain a significant amount of weight back pretty quickly, or at least like a reasonable rebound, and still had no testosterone recovery. You know, if after 3 months your testosterone does not bounce back after getting back up to your pre-cutting calorie intake levels, then you have a fucking problem. Then things get a bit sketchy, because like even in the literature we see, for example, natural bodybuilding competition preparation and recovery, a 12-month case study, we look at table 4 blood variables. And by the way, this is a pretty commonly referenced case study in terms of what happened to a guy's hormonal profile doing a cut for a bodybuilding show as a natural, you know, looking at his thyroid hormone, his testosterone levels, cortisol, leptin, ghrelin, insulin, etc. And getting an idea of how long it took to recover, how severely his HPTA was downregulated and whatnot. And we can see here, this guy had a pretty reasonable starting point with 922 nanogram per deciliter total T. 6 months out, getting to the show, obviously things get, you know, severely diminished to the point where it's like, holy shit, this guy is literally like almost a quarter of what he was before, like 227 nanogram per deciliter total T. But then within like fairly, not short order, but 3 months after the show, back up to 870 nanograms per deciliter. And then here he's back up to 991, so above baseline 6 months after. So, but again, he wasn't fully recovered after 3 months. I believe this 3 is reflective of 6 months out, 3 months out, show, 3 months post, 6 months post. So yeah, like this guy did recover a significant amount of function though pretty quickly, but it was from restoring his calories to where they were, like actually eating getting enough substrate to fuel physiologic functions again. So for this other guy, him saying straight up, I wanted to see if I could get enough zinc in, get enough sleep, eat at maintenance to recover my test naturally. You know, the context on that I believe is different than what most people would refer to when they say I'm trying to recover and eat more, like eat up, you know, try and restore my, you know, get to baseline. I feel like he has a different definition of what his actual, you know, baseline maintenance is. Because if you actually ate at maintenance calories, your pre-cutting calorie levels, you should see substantial recovery within a couple months to the point where you're almost at baseline a few months later. So the fact that, well, we don't even know what his baseline is. So I guess it's hypothetically possible that he could have had a baseline that was shitty to begin with. And this is reflective of him recovering and he just didn't have good levels to begin with. We don't really know. This is all kind of in the dark speculation shit without more context on the situation. So I guess I'll let him talk and see if he says anything else.
But it's still in the low range. So yeah, I'm going to talk more about my experience being shredded, but for now I know it's a very in-depth video. I hope you found it interesting, and yeah, like the video for me. It's actually very private to share this, but I just wanted to share it, you know, and get the message across that, I mean, like, being shredded and getting like that shred as a natural, you can do it, but it's addicting, bro. Watch out. And if you get there, just realize it sucks and you probably get like problems, you know, if you stay there. And trust me, I know some influencers who feel like shit, look shredded, they can't let the shreds go, alright? So yeah, that's all I want to share, man. I mean, like, being shredded, I mean, it looks sick. Most of them are like supplementing with some illegal things. Or yeah, you know, or they have like the good genetics for it. And yeah, in my case, and most of the people who are watching this will not have those genetics. So I hope you liked the video. I know it was a long one for my feeling, but if you liked it, like the video, guys, for me, subscribe, and I see you next time. Much love.
All right, so yeah, that's basically the like honestly, the takeaway is basically what I mentioned earlier in terms of if you are going to maintain a shredded physique that is beyond what your body can sustain without thinking it's starving to death, the only way you're going to maintain like high tier test levels and high tier thyroid hormone output and whatnot is in general going to be with TRT in the equation. I'm not saying you should do that, but there's definitely an argument to be made if you're going to put yourself in a compromised situation as a fitness model or something where you're perpetually like peeled like around the clock, essentially year round. Now, obviously, how many individuals will that apply to? Like almost nobody. But there are fitness influencer guys who are shredded a long period of time throughout the year. And those individuals, would they be better off, just staying natural and walking around with borderline hypogonadal levels or actual hypogonadal levels with TSHs through the fucking roof and, stressing out different organ systems in their body? Those guys, there's probably a case to be made for HRT as a like a proactive strategy, to be honest. But for other individuals, staying shredded in single digits naturally is just not really complementary to a high level of health, high quality of life, etc. However, I do think as a natural, you can sustain reasonable endocrine parameters with, striking distance of single digits. And we do see individuals who do that quite often, 10 to 12% body fat, obviously much more difficult to adhere to and to sustain as a natural. It's obviously a lot fucking easier if you're on TRT even, not even super physiological dosages, but just straight up TRT. You maintain that endogenous steady state bleed of hormones all the time, regardless of if you're depriving yourself of nutrients, regardless if you get a shitty night of sleep, regardless if you drink, regardless of fucking anything, you have that chronic bleed all the time, offsetting catabolism, improving muscle protein synthesis around the clock, antagonizing glucocorticoid receptors, and there's no pulsatile secretion either. It's all, a steady state bleed. So you not only have this amount that is just something you would never have in your body at that deprived nutrient status, but in addition to that, it's around the clock perpetually rather than in a pulsatile manner. So TRT is significantly enhancing, despite it being therapeutic replacement on paper in this kind of a context. And again, is it something that's suitable for you? Like, I don't even know if that's the point of the video necessarily. Rather, I just kind of want to bring that point up. For individuals like Marine, it sort of makes sense where they're coming from in, like, obviously there is the vanity component to some extent that comes along with it. But in addition to that, when you're staying shredded year round for content or whatever, you're trying to be like a fitness idol that people aspire to be like or whatever, is it going to be healthy to stay, 7-8% as a natural year round? No, it's fucking not, like I don't know anyone who could do that naturally and thrive. Like, it's just not feasible. It's not conducive to long-term health. In fact, I would probably argue that it is counterproductive to health, despite you being, on the surface, on the exterior, being one of the healthiest individuals ever, and not be on gear. Most people would think, oh, you're like the fucking cream of the crop. Like, for example, Jeff Cavalier in his mid-40s walking around at like whatever, fucking 6% body fat. Like, if he was natural, do you think he would be walking around with a high quality level of health, given that he's in his 40s with a down-regulated HPTA, already, suppressed testosterone compared to when he was in his 20s, and yet he's functioning with like shredded bodybuilder level body fat levels and holding simultaneous mass and somehow thriving in his lifestyle. So at the same time, like, how feasible is that as a natural? Like, it's not. You would be fucking suffering. Like, it would be arguably unhealthy as fuck, to the point that, like, you would argue that it is almost like promoting disorders, like that's how bad it would be to be walking around at 6-7% as a natural all the time. You'd be like cardio and neurotoxic probably. Like, I don't know how you could function with that kind of a hormone profile as a natural, like around the clock. Imagine walking around with a fucking hypothyroid TSH level all the time. Imagine walking around with tanked gonadotropins all the time just to maintain, 7% body fat, to feel like dog shit. Like, it's just not a feasible strategy. So I definitely think that naturals can get shredded and they can obviously recover to a healthy state within reasonably short order. It's not the fastest thing, but it's definitely, you will recover. At least, clinically, we see like pretty reasonable recoveries in a couple months. But it's not something that you can sustain year round, at least in a healthy manner. So some people, they do it, I guess, but it's not healthy whatsoever. And for this guy, he learned the hard way what, natural bodybuilding, what goes into it, So anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I thought this is a bit of an interesting one to reflect on the, for the natural guys, because a lot of guys are natural who watch this channel, believe it or not. And, there is some practical takeaway knowledge for them here in terms of what kind of duration, you can get away with being shredded, what happens after, how long it takes to recover. Could it be potentially more harmful and deleterious to your health to not be on TRT if you were to try and maintain a shredded physique all the time? Again, though, this is not something you should be doing. Like if you want to stay natural, but you want to be shredded, like you should be planning your time, I guess, better for when you want to peak rather than thinking like getting on TRT solely because you want to be shredded year round. Like I don't necessarily know if that is like a justified approach necessarily. Like to each his own. Some people do want to do that, and that's totally fine. Actually, I don't even know why I would be judgmental of that. That's like a fucking personal decision. By all means, if that's what you want to do. But in terms of just like at a practical level, if you want to be shredded as a natural, I guess you just go into it knowing you have that context that it's not going to be a sustainable strategy, and you will suffer a bit more for sure. And it may even become harmful to your health at some point if you do try to sustain it. So just be aware of that and be careful, because anybody who does try and sustain it, I would imagine HRT is probably in your future. So anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, check out my blog, moreplates4days.com, follow me on Instagram at More Plates More Dates, Facebook, Snapchat, BitChute, Twitter, TikTok, couple podcasts. If you want to support the channel, you can check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below. My TRT clinic, it's all telemedicine from the comfort of your own home. Gorilla Mind, nootropic formulas, Gorilla Mode, pre-workout formulas. I design myself from scratch. My recommended lab tests and diagnostics to stay on top of your health. And anything else I'm associated with, it's all in the video description below. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.